Welcome to episode 4 of the Managing Violence podcast. My name is Joe Saunders and I'm your host as we deconstruct all matters self-defense, aggression management and violence prevention. My guest today is one I'm extremely excited about. This guest has been a massive influence on me as a person and as a professional. And my guest today is Rory Miller. Now, Rory Miller is an author, a martial arts instructor and a former law enforcement officer. He spent 17 years, including 10 as a sergeant with the County Sheriff's Office in Portland, Oregon. He was a CERT team member for 11 years and a team leader for 6. His training has included over 800 hours of tactical training, witness protection, close quarters handgun training with the U.S. Marshals, incident command systems, instructor development courses, hostage negotiations and hostage survival, integrated use of force and confrontational simulations instructors, mental health, and of course defensive tactics. Rory has developed and designed and taught courses including confrontational simulations, uncontrolled environments, crisis communications with the mentally ill, CERT operations and planning, defensive tactics and use of force for his and other local agencies. In 2008, Rory Miller left his agency to spend over a year in Iraq with the Department of Justice as a civilian advisor to the Iraqi corrections system. He has a bachelor's degree in psychology, a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and college varsities in judo and fencing. He likes stimulating conversation and long sword fights on the beach. His written works include a plethora of material, which is fantastic for, if you're listening to this podcast, it's probably fantastic for you. His books include Meditations on Violence, Facing Violence, Training for Sudden Violence, which is an excellent resource for instructors, Conflict Communication, Violence, a Writer's Guide. So if you like writing fiction that involves violence, pick up Violence, a Writer's Guide. Force Decisions and Scaling Force, which are excellent for anyone in law enforcement or security. And then a variety of ebooks as well, which are really too numerous to mention. You can check it all out at Rory's website, which is chirontraining.com. That's CHIRON training.com. So without further ado, let's jump right into the interview with Rory Miller. All right, Rory Miller, thanks for joining us on the show. How are you, my friend?
Hey, Joe, I'm doing good.
That's fantastic. Rory, as we've talked about off air, your work has been a tremendous influence in my work and in my life. And I read it at a very pivotal time. I read Meditations on Violence at a very pivotal time in my life where I just moved from working in nightclub security into a acute mental health setting. So a lot of what you talked about from a corrections point of view made a lot of sense because really our demographics were very similar, except all of my patients were, all of my clients were legitimately mentally ill, or at least doing a very good job of pretending to be. So, man, it was a great eye opener. So, I just want to thank you very much for coming on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. And remind me afterwards. I did a little ebook on dealing with the mentally ill in a correction setting, and remind me, and I'll send you a copy so you can tell me what you think of it.
Oh, awesome! That'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
So, Rory, just for people that may not have heard of you before or that may not have come across your work before, can you give us a bit of a rundown on your introduction to, I know you started off as a martial artist, so maybe we can talk about how you got into martial arts and then how that worked into your occupation.
Okay, I'm not sure how long you want the story to be, but I came from a town so small that there was no training there. When I went to college, and I had just turned 17 when I started college, this was 81, so it was well accepted that the way to become a complete human being was to study martial arts. And I had a little bit of a temper issue. And so I stumbled on judo as soon as I got there. Dabbled in everything else I could do, but loved judo. Did that for many years. Then when I was 21, got a job as a bouncer in a casino. Did some other security after that. When I was 26, so at this point I've been studying martial arts for about 9 years. I got hired as a corrections officer for the sheriff's office here. So I was working jails for the next 17 years.
That's a good way of getting used to real violence.
Yeah, I think. So it was judo and martially. I transitioned. I found a classical jiu-jitsu school with a really superb instructor. And it's there's a lot of bouncing about traditional and classical in sport, but this was simply the most brutal thing I'd ever seen. It's for an actual survival fight, it matched closer than any modern system I'd seen. Its big weaknesses had absolutely nothing for handcuffing.
Right.
It was about how to break the neck of someone wearing armor.
Yeah.
So not it would have been outside of policy most of the time. So I had to study other stuff and bring it back to the reality I was living in. And that's part of the whole reality thing, is whose reality are we talking about?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, corrections. I got a vast amount. I mean, when you crunch the numbers, there was a 2-year period where it was averaging about 2 fights a week, and when I say, I should say uses of force, and when I say that, that only includes the ones bad enough you had to write a report over.
Yeah.
Yeah, the minor stuff, if we didn't have to write a report, it didn't count.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and a lot of that was being a rookie, just being dumb, not knowing how to talk. You know, those are skills you learn over time. Your reputation should, unless you're a dick, your reputation should decrease your uses of force over time. So a lot of the really, really intense stuff was earlier in my career. The weirder stuff happened later, because then I was on the tactical team. So we get called out for the stuff where the regular stuff didn't work.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you make about the less exposure you have, the less experience you have, the worse the situations tend to be, because you don't read them as well, you don't preempt as well, and also the people you're working with can't read you as well, I guess, and they don't know how far to push.
That's a couple of tangents, because not being readable is a huge power, because humans are more concerned with uncertainty than they are with danger.
Yes, it's true.
If you know it's a deadly snake, then you have one reaction. But if it's something that looks like it might be a snake, people tend to actually give it a wider berth than if they're sure.
Yeah, wow, that's a really fascinating point. That's really good.
And the other one is that whole reputation talking. You mentioned, you didn't use the word preemptive, but you mentioned handling it earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the biggest mental shifts, is when you're a rookie, you want to, oh my God, this is going to be a fight. How do I win this fight?
Mm-hmm.
And you get to a certain stage of maturity when it's go, ooh, who said this has to be a fight? I don't need to come up with an answer. Let me change the question.
Yeah, exactly. How do we change the trajectory of where this is heading?
Yeah, if you're trying to figure out how to win a fight, then you've already let the other guy decide what kind of contact it's going to be, and that gives him the advantage.
Yeah, perfect, man. Look, we're a couple of minutes in. You're already dropping wisdom. This is fantastic. We'll be done within 15 minutes.
Okay, if wisdom is just the distillation of mistakes.
Very good.
Yeah.
So you went into corrections. Got plenty of experience with violence there.
Did that for a while. Got bored and went to Iraq as a contractor for a year.
So it's what everyone does when they get bored. Yeah.
Well, it was I got recruited, so it was a combination of, I was starting to get complacent, which is, we can joke about being bored, but when you start doing things are stupid to make it more interesting, you should not be doing that again. That's amateur thinking, and I was going into there to try to keep my interest up. Getting called for a problem and not asking what the problem is, just walking in blind because it'd be more interesting. And that's fucked up. If I saw a rookie do that, I would chew him out, and I was starting to do that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting dynamic, when you get too comfortable with the extreme situations. It's almost like you try to make them more dangerous just to see what would happen.
Yeah, and that, again, that's so unprofessional, and I caught myself doing it. So time to up the stakes to the point I get interested, or walk away, or the other classic, go into the training unit, because you aren't fit to be actually doing the job anymore.
Yeah. So how did the transition go? How did you end up in Iraq, and what was your role over there?
The transition was basically going through background checks and getting some training, getting checked out and some stuff. But there I was helping to be an advisor for the Iraqi Correction Service. And that was Really fascinating. Just culturally, I was expecting to go over there and teaching this high end, tactical stuff, and but we wound up explaining why it was important to like know how many inmates you had.
Yeah, wow.
It was, yeah, and their system was so different. One example that was crazy for me, and it's old enough. In the U.S., if you found someone in prison, you couldn't find any documentation as why they're you. You're just doing a name check, and you go through and you count, and you've got one extra, and you've got a name, and you run through, and you can find no record he's ever been arrested. You could not keep him in prison. Is that track for Australia too?
Yeah, that's fairly similar.
Okay. The system in Iraq had been designed, for a very long time for a totally different purpose. And if you found someone in there with no documentation, there was no legal way to release him.
Right. Yeah, of course. It's a completely different scenario. Yeah.
Yeah, a system designed to make problems disappear instead of, what our system is for.
Mm.
And, disappear permanently just by making paperwork go away. And that was the kind of thing that we were fighting all the time.
Yeah, wow. That's really interesting. And the Australian military did a lot of training roles in Iraq as well. And speaking to some friends of mine that were in advisory or training roles with the Iraqi Defense Forces, they sort of said the same thing. They expected to come in and do kicking down doors and some crazy fun stuff, and instead they were just teaching people how to drive a manual vehicle or how to
aiming is huge.
Aiming, standing together, or how to make a bed, even like just real basic stuff. So that does track very well with what I've heard previously. So after Iraq, now obviously at some point you got involved in the training of defensive tactics and the teaching of violence management. So how did that transition take place?
That was okay. This is one of those dead air things when you think about, because I'm thinking about whether I want to say this out loud. The one hardest thing to deal with in Iraq was, I thought our bureaucracy was bad, but they've had it for 3,000 more years. And I kind of went away thinking, I never want to work for an agency again. I don't want to work for a government again. I don't want to have, it doesn't matter what you did, it matters what's documented. And I was seeing people not do stuff but document it, who were getting rewarded, and people working their asses off, and if the documentation were there, it didn't happen. And that the careerism and, basically anyone that's dealt with the bureaucracy knows what I'm talking about. But it was like we sent some of our best people, but some of our worst bureaucracy over there. And then it got married to a bureaucracy that was, 3,000 years more entrenched than ours. And it was just, there is stuff under non-disclosure agreements, because there's one that still just pisses me off. And I didn't want to be part of it anymore ever again. Unfortunately, the only thing I'm really good at is only legal if you're doing it for a government.
I like that. That's I can relate.
Yeah, so basically my only real marketable skill was teaching people the stuff that's only legal if you do it for government. And so I decided to try to see if I can make that work, and so far it's doing okay.
So I know you've told this story before, but I love the story of how your first book got published. Can you touch on that just for our listeners?
Yeah, I don't know how deep you want to go. There's an essay in Meditations on Violence, one about baggage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was all 2002. It was let's see. And then weirdly, I went over, because I do keep journals. I went over my journal for that time, and actually there were less fights that year than usual. There was a lot of less stuff. Mm-hmm. But it was my first body recovery was search and rescue. And that was a brain splatter from, and we'll never know, fall, push, accident, suicide. We delivered a baby in reception and booking that was addicted to 2 drugs, and just, so it goes through the moment of feeling. And I'm literally, the delivery took like 2.5 minutes, because we got this very pregnant woman. It's like, you guys take care of her, and I go to copy some paperwork, and it comes over the radio is like, Sarge, we just delivered a baby, and I'm going, you better be fucking kidding me. So go in, and it's like everyone's crying, the miracle of birth and all that stuff. If you have kids, so yeah. And it's like, and I had that same emotion that just welling up, and then I look at the baby, and I knew enough about the mom that this was, and I'm going to get the numbers wrong here because it's been a while and I'm old, my memory is shitty, but it was something like her 10th pregnancy and 6th live birth, something on that order. She'd wanted to have it in the jail so she would be responsible for the care of it, because she knows she was going to be doing a little bit of time. She'd maxed out on both of her drugs of choice, which, if I remember correctly, were heroin and crack. And so this little miracle of life is suddenly this baby who's born in pain, addicted to drugs, with a piece of shit mother, that the best chance this baby has is for someone to shoot that kid's mother in the head right now. And it just collapsed, that feeling. Had a couple of friends commit suicide. And suicide is that's a whole crazy thing by itself. The shooting, I never know whether to call a shooting or not. It was one of those that's supposed to be a rubber bullet which bounces off, and best speculation is that at some point the rubber bullets gotten warm and then cold again, so they stayed together, and I wound up blowing a hole in a guy. Not expecting it. My agency didn't even know whether to call it a shooting, so they did half the protocol but not the other half. Anyway, it was just, all this stuff just happened like back to back to back to back to back. And for the first time, so 2002, so this was 9 years in. Is that right? No, 91, 11 years in. And for the first time, it was keeping me awake at night. I was, thoughts welling up, not sleeping. And so I started writing to get out of my head. We're getting back to what you originally asked.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of took the shape of a book, because not a book, it took a shape of, martial arts and real world, because I was also running into, up till this time, I would just go and train and sweat and bleed, and the world, you'd go in, you'd bow in, you'd work your ass off, you'd roll with everybody, brawl, randori, and then, you'd bow back in, and it was a place where I cleaned myself out. And that wasn't working, because I was hearing all these martial arts talk about how cool it would be if, and I'm thinking, dude, I'm waiting to see whether I'm going to get sued.
Yeah. And it's a long wait sometimes.
Yeah. So the people I went to for support they were making it worse. And so I started writing it down to just get out of my head. And I kind of had it in my head that, because I was teaching traditional jiu-jitsu at the time, that when or if I ever started promoting people to black belt, that I would give them this is the stuff I can never teach you in class. And sent it to a couple of experienced friends. One of those was Chris Wilder. And Chris and if you've heard me talk about this before, he called me up and goes, "Oh, by the way, when I got it, I was on the phone to my publisher. I sent it on to him. I hope you don't mind."
I love that you got Gorilla published. And, someone just sort of snuck up and published you.
There's a lot. A couple of my friends were talking about, there's this traditional way people get published, because my wife is a writer, and almost none of the people that I know of in the self-defense community actually got published by following those rules. They got recruited, or they, collared someone at a party, or
Yeah, that's fascinating, and I'm very glad that Chris did that, because obviously it started you off on a whole new section of your life as an author, as opposed to just being a knuckle dragger and trainer.
It's weird. And it's weird. I don't know, because without the books, I wouldn't have been successful doing the training.
Mm-hmm.
There would have been no reason for people to find me.
Yeah, well, look, I remember when I first saw Meditations on Violence. I think I was I was on Amazon. I believe I was looking to buy another copy of The Gift of Fear to give to somebody,
Mm-hmm.
and it came up as a recommended purchase. And I saw the title and I thought that's interesting. And I kind of expected it to be a book of poetry or some sort of something written by an Aikido guy. To be honest,
Yeah.
and then as I sort of read the sample, I was like, oh, this is good. This guy gets it. There's
Yeah.
something else to this, and man, yeah, I've read pretty much everything else I've found of yours, which is yeah, it's great. But just changing gears, so we've covered
Okay.
your background fairly well. One of the things that I think your work did exceptionally well, at least in my mind, was that it wasn't so much the material or the concepts were new to me, because yeah, I'd been a fan of people like Jeff Thompson and
Mm-hmm.
Richard Dimitri, Mark McYoung, and those sort of guys. But what you did really well in my mind is that you organized and systematized and gave language or common language to some of the phenomena that we all recognized. So basically what it did for me is it replaced all the language I was using to describe different types of violence, and I just stole the labels that you use because I found them to be really efficient. So I just wanted to, for people that have no familiarity with your work, I just wanted to spend a little bit of time going into what you see as the predominant types of violence, whether it be social or
Mm-hmm.
predatory, and and the subsections within those. If you can sort of give us an aerial view of what that looks like.
Okay, the thumbnails. And
Yeah.
have you read anything with where we talk about affordances yet?
Not off the top of my head, I don't think so.
Okay, because it was I got exposed to the idea after the first couple of books came out, and I think I've talked about it in Concom a little bit. Um, but it's a further clarifier. So way I usually break it up is that Maslow's pyramid, and I have a lot of issues with it as a theory, but as a model, enough people know it that you can piggyback ideas on it without them getting defensive.
Sure, that
It,
makes
it
sense.
so um, the basic breakdown is that bottom level of survival. You know, you're on fire, you're drowning, a tiger's chewing on your leg. If that's what's going on, that's what you need to deal with. You're going to deal with it in a certain way. The next level up, you're hungry, you're thirsty, you need to solve this problem, and you can't take any chances to do it. Next level up is belongingness, and one above that is esteem. Those are the social levels, and almost all the conflict there is communication. And the top level in his pyramid is self-actualized, which the way it was presented in freshman psychology, this is where you aren't controlled by peer pressure. You're living the life that you want, and you're going to be this great person, an inventor or an artist or some of that bullshit.
Sure.
But violence can come from either of those levels. So the first thing is that we all have a lot of experience, maybe not with violence, with conflict at the social levels. People trying to get into groups or establish that their group is the best or enforce the rules of their group. So we have a lot of experience with that. Where we fuck up is where how much bad language can I use?
Yeah, go for it, man.
Okay,
The podcast is listed as explicit, so you're welcome to go as far as you
cool.
want.
Cool. So we fuck that up when we try to take those social rules and expectations and beliefs and even physical patterns and try to apply them anywhere else. So going back to that bottom level, these are people in panic. If you're working a job professionally, then you can run into PCP or excited delirium or bath salts or whatever the current thing that people do to fuck themselves up with now. But even civilians have heard about drowning people. And you don't swim up to drowning people and try to get in touch with their inner child or their self-esteem issues because they'll kill you. The affordance thing is how you see something controls what you can do with it. Whenever you see something, you see a car, it's for certain things. And anything that's not on that list in your head, you can't imagine doing, so you can't do it. So it's for driving and transportation and carrying things and maybe ramming stuff. But until you think about it, you don't think about using it to start a coral reef.
Sure.
Okay. So when you think about a drowning person, the reason that you can't communicate them is they are not seeing you as a person, they're seeing you as a flotation device. And so the list of stuff they can do in their heads with you is the stuff that they can do with a piece of floating wreckage. They'll climb on top of you.
Mm. That's a
Okay, so,
really good analogy. Yeah.
right. So that affordancing becomes key. So that next level up, that survival, if you need food, you start seeing things, people as ways to get money for food, and you hunt them. You don't fight them because you want to take no chances. You want this to be as efficient as possible. Um, in places or crime that's driven by drugs, it's a similar kind of thing. It's hunting, and there are different levels of skill at it and stuff like that. But in that moment, they're not thinking of you as a person; they're thinking of you as a resource. And when you get to that self-actualized person, the ones that are violent, and one of the things I like to joke about is everyone thinks you'd be a good person. If you're an asshole and you get self-actualized, you're a self-actualized asshole. Th- this is a person that sees you as a toy, as at the nonviolent low level, you're just something to fuck with. You're amusing. At the higher level, you're a toy, and this is someone that can do the horrible things to a human that bad little brothers did to their sisters' Barbie dolls.
Mm.
You can
Mm.
chop off heads for fun. You can, and you don't any more than. And we can get into the mindset because if you played any video games, you played a first-person video game. Have you ever lost sleep over the thousands of pixelated people you've killed? So when I break them up that way, my two big divisions are social and asocial. Social, they think of you as a person. Asocial, they don't. Um, and the difference between social and asocial is the difference between fighting and hunting. Fighting is almost always a form of communication. You're trying to send a message. And fighting tends to be super inefficient because subconsciously you almost always give the other person a turn. When you're hunting, you don't do that. They just don't get a chance. And it doesn't have to be lethal. Anyone who's handcuffed a whole bunch of people can go into that mode where you just do it. And nowhere in there does that person get their turn. Lauren Christian calls that, there are only so many beats in the fight, and all the beats are filled with my stuff.
It's very good.
It's so, but bad guys tend to be able to access that better than we do, better than good guys do. Good guys have to learn to access it, and we have so much. I'm going to say bullshit morality, but remind me to define it later. That people think that if you are hyper efficient, you are taking a step into being a bad person, and that's not true. It's one of those, I want good people to be more efficient than bad people because they will use it for good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, talking about, I guess it fits into the social violence paradigm with the monkey dance, the group monkey dance, the status seeking show. Can you just go over those labels and the related labels for people that may not be familiar with your work?
Sure. Monkey dance, and this is one. The only thing I think I really did important in meditation on violence was put a language on some of the stuff because we'd all seen it.
Yeah.
Monkey dance is to drunk 18-year-olds. What you looking at? And then they start talking shit, and they do the posturing and the closing, and they have the rhythmic movements, and then one will either poke the chest or shove the chest or knock the ball cap off, and they can do that for a while, and then we'll do a stupid looping overhand right or overhand punch. Um, there's a whole bunch of dumb stuff in here. It's not self-defense. It's mutual combat. Mutual combat is not self-defense. When you look at the body language, the way they stand, there's no stupider way to stand in a fight. They'll have their feet squared up so that their power line is exactly the wrong way to look. They have all their targets exposed. They have their arms away from the body because they're trying to look big, like a cat puffing out its fur. And the types of strikes they do there tend to be the ones we know don't work. Almost anyone who gets involved in monkey dance, if they got hurt, it's because they fell and hit their head. Friends are supposed to pull them apart. It's this whole pattern, and it's completely predictable. And once you predict the other person, you just skip steps and do anything you want. And you don't have to play the game.
I think that's a very key point, and I think that's it sounds so basic for those of us that have been around violence, but it's amazing how intoxicating the monkey dance becomes if you're not familiar with it. And it's almost like being charmed by being charmed by the snake in a way that people they see the monkey dance in front of them and they have to participate.
Well, you have all these voices in your head, and I want to say being crude here. The words aren't actually that crude, but the concept is. But there are all these voices in your head saying you will never get laid again if you back down.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, everything about that is about trying to impress a female chimpanzee. And human women are not in general impressed by the stuff that impresses a female chimpanzee, but our wiring says that they are. You had a kid up there not too long ago who thought he could impress a tourist by, I'm going to jump in some crocodile infested water to show how
Yeah,
cool I am. Yeah,
yeah,
what the
didn't work out.
fuck?
Didn't
Okay,
work
yeah,
out.
and it not only did not work out for him, but she was not particularly impressed.
No,
Yeah,
no,
something
and
about yeah, getting partially eaten does not make you a sex object.
yeah, yeah, but you see the
Who
same
knew?
thing with young yeah, with young men
Mm-hmm.
with speeding and reckless driving and
Mm-hmm.
stupid stunts is of all sorts. I think we there's probably another long episode there in the ways in which young men don't understand female brains, and we just try to do the most ridiculous stuff possible, hoping it will work. So
And if we were trying to push chimpanzees, it might. It might
yeah,
work.
I
But
mean,
then
maybe
you,
maybe we don't have it wrong. Maybe we're just picking the wrong target demographic.
yeah, yeah. Then you win and you're stuck with a chimpanzee, and that doesn't look fun to me at all.
So I know some friends who've
Uh,
ended up like that.
okay, so group monkey dance is a bunch of people beating the crap out of somebody else,
Hmm.
and there are three divisions in there. There's a lot of things that are different that look the same.
Hmm.
So one of them is just pack behavior, and that's just bonding. You get together with a bunch of friends and do a whole bunch of damage, and it makes that group tighter. And I can go into this in a lot more detail, but basically, this is the reason why soldiers who gone on combat patrols get tight, or special teams in the police get tight, because you're doing something that's for the good of the tribe, that sheds blood, and it's done under high adrenaline.
Hmm. Hmm.
And but that dynamic is the same for drive-by shooting or wildings or the knockout game, or it's the same. From the victim's point of view, it probably shouldn't even be considered social. It's social for the pack. But if the pack
Yeah.
is that pack of hyenas have decided you're a gazelle, it's not social for you.
Mm.
Um,
Actually, can we spend a little bit of time on that because as I mentioned to you
sure.
yesterday, it's for where I am in Melbourne at the moment, it's very well publicised that we have an issue at the moment with
Mm-hmm.
groups of African teenagers, or I should say, people purportedly of African appearance, uh,
Mm-hmm.
who are mostly either refugees or children of refugees that are forming groups and basically terrorizing their neighborhoods. And
Mm-hmm.
it's taken the form of tourists and just people out walking, getting
Mm-hmm.
jumped for no apparent reason. There is an element of robbery where phones and wallets and so on have been
Yep.
taken, but it seems to be secondary to the violence.
Mm-hmm.
And occasionally it's an organized raid. I was managing the security for an event a couple of years ago, and I wasn't on site at the time, but there was fireworks, and as soon as everybody pulled their phone out of their pocket to film the fireworks, we had 50 African teenagers that stormed the fairground and literally ran through, snatching phones and punching people in the face. So that sometimes it's more coordinated than other times,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, the one that's been sort of drawing the ire of the public lately has been these random unprovoked beatings, which seem completely and utterly senseless. So, from your perspective as an instructor, what advice would you give to people that are concerned about that violence, and what can they do about it?
There's a bunch here. So it's not senseless. There's a lot of other stuff going on here, but it's one of those. It makes their group tighter. It also makes people less likely to get involved in their group stuff. You
Yeah,
won't get people
that
going to their neighborhood. It makes it high stakes to confront them. And this is where you get into and people deny that they exist, but there are no-go zones.
hmm.
There are places where police do not go under normal circumstances, largely because they know that the community is not going to support them there.
Hmm.
It's the cost to benefit ratio for everybody is too low. Um, Within that, and then in the moment, you keep an eye out for packs, and they'll usually be young males, but not always. Packs moving purposely, packs who are coordinating, and you'll see that more in looks than in voices. If they're watching, look at what they're watching. If it goes physical, you are not fighting to win, you're fighting to escape. which means, and this is an actual technique, which is there's no way you're going to get it visually, but basically look for the biggest gap you can see or the most daylight, and you drive through there as a wedge. So your arms come out in a wedge position as you drop step into that space, and you keep your shoulders high to protect your neck and head, and you keep your arms extended and start grabbing shoulders and swimming out.
Mm-hmm.
It's swimming
Mm-hmm.
through people. And if you've done bouncer work, you've probably done, or especially heavy nightclubs,
Yeah.
you've probably done something similar. But that's you break out of the group. The other thing to watch for is a roper, and that's if you get anyone confronting you, but he's got friends in the back who look eager to jump in. Um, they're trying to get you to do the steps in the monkey dance, because again, the monkey dance is almost always one-on-one. You expect the one-on-one, but if it's one of these group attacks, they'll use that to sucker you in. So watch for the roper.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. One of the things that I don't know if you noticed, I wrote an article a couple of days ago about this because we had another one that the police released some CCTV and we could sort of see the footage, see the attack unfold to a degree. But one thing that has been apparent in a number of these attacks that's been captured on CCTV has been that the people that have been targeted have literally walked right into the group, or at least stayed put while the group walked into them. And they've engaged in conversation of some sort, whether presumably it's a demand for a phone or it's a challenge of some sort, and then the sucker punch has sort of taken them by surprise. But I mean, the sucker punch started 5 minutes prior,
Yeah.
and I think that's something that I try to stress to people is that if your threat is still 2 blocks away, that's a fantastic time to run. don't wait until you find out if they're going to be violent.
We just did an instructor development class, so a lot of stuff is on my head right now.
Hmm.
But part of that is that most self-defense people, most self-defense instructors focus on the attack. And there's a whole bunch of stuff leading up to the attack, which actually has better avenues the earlier you can see it coming. And they also tend to ignore the consequences, the stuff that's going to that will happen afterwards. And if you want to be a complete instructor in self-defense, you have to work on the whole package before, during, and after. And if you don't have the necessary information to do that, you need to get it, because handling it before will save a lot more students than will ever survive the fight, and the ones that aren't prepared for the aftermath. And that's not just the psychological, all that, but simple fact. If a woman in an office sets good boundaries, the guy's going to immediately go tell all the other coworkers what a bitch she's being in an attempt to
Hmm.
punish her for doing what she should do. And if your students aren't prepared for that, then they're flummoxed.
Yeah, I
So
think also, like similar to yourself, I've trained people that operate in a fairly regulated environment where everyone's evaluating what they do based on a use of force policy or some sort of hierarchy of controls. And as long as they can justify it against that policy, they feel that it was fine, which is
yeah,
great in theory, except it doesn't save you from civil litigation later. Just because your department says it was fine, or because the police say that was a reasonable use of force, doesn't mean you still won't be sued for loss of income and permanent disfigurement and so on later on. And
and just simple
yeah,
retaliation. It's if whoever you
mm,
defend yourself with has a brother or a gang, um, and once any investigation, at least here, any investigation paperwork um, can become public knowledge. It's really not hard to find out where your kids are.
yeah, yeah. Well, look, one of my instructors, Richard Dimitri, tells a story from him growing up, where a guy got into a fight at a party. He humiliated this other kid, knocked him out, and posed for a photo standing on the kid's chest, and typical sort of teenage stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
then 3 months later, he was walking out of a cinema with his girlfriend, and this kid was there, and his friends said, "Hey, that's that guy that knocked you out."
No.
And the kid went up and stabbed both of them, and the girlfriend died, and the guy who threw the punch ended up living, but lived with the knowledge that his girlfriend was
Yeah.
dead because of a stupid drunken fight he got into. And
Yeah.
I think that's that whole picture that people miss, is that the violence doesn't end when you think it's over. It ends when all parties agree it's over.
Yeah. And yes, exactly. It happens in the real world, not in a nice, clean place with a beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah. Oh, look, I got attacked with a can of baked beans while I was doing my grocery shopping by a guy that I
Okay.
threw out of a nightclub 3 weeks prior.
Mhm.
And that's when I learned not to work in nightclubs that are close to where I live, because otherwise I have to do my grocery shopping 3 suburbs over. But, that was an interesting experience. I was just glad he hit me with the flat surface and not the hard edge.
One of
uh,
my
yeah.
early things, one of the first couple of inmates I ran to, running into him on the street afterwards, I was really glad I wasn't a dick.
Yeah, yeah, no
Yeah.
doubt.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of time to think about things they'd like to do to you if you are.
Yeah. They
Yeah,
can plan.
we had the same thing when I was working in mental health. We had a patient who had been discharged and been living, on their own for a number of years, and
Mm.
they started stalking a nurse that they had suddenly decided they didn't like, or had remembered they didn't like, and started showing up at the workplace and loitering in the car park. And yeah, we were alerted to that and had to address that. And they had all sorts of very graphic plans of what they were planning to do to this nurse who had apparently mistreated them several years prior. And yeah, no, like I say, that nurse would have been completely oblivious to the fact that there was
Yeah.
any threat to his life at that point. So,
Yeah. You have, how many people did you watch when you were working mental health?
no, it depends, but up to 50 at a time.
Yeah. So you've got 50 people to memorize and figure out, but 50 people have one to memorize
Yeah,
and figure out. You can't win
exactly.
that.
Yeah, and especially it's a revolving door. So I mean,
Hmm.
you might have 300 patients that you deal with over the course of a 6 month period, and you just don't know who, depending on what state of mind they were in when they met you.
Yeah.
Sometimes the delusions are fantastic. I might even edit this out of the podcast just because it's a bit of a sidetrack. But
It's okay.
no, I
People
had this
like those.
guy. I had this guy who his delusion was so good that I actually kind of wanted to steal it and turn it into a movie.
Hmm.
He he had the "I am God" complex, which, as you know, is pretty common.
Hmm.
He believed he was God, but he was being held in a seclusion room because he was a threat. He was a danger to himself, and we had to go down and see him several times a day because he refused to eat. So we had to physically restrain him while he was force fed food. And so I got to know the guy fairly well because we had plenty of conversations. And his delusion was that not only was he God, but that everybody around him was actually gods from other religions. So because I was a big guy and I was wearing blue, he called me Neptune. And there
Hmm.
was a mental health nurse who had a long beard, and he was Zeus. And there's another guy who's kind of jacked, and he was Hercules. And he basically just picked all these gods from different religions. And in his mind, the gods of the other religions had taken him, the Christian God, captive,
Hmm.
so that he couldn't answer prayers and couldn't perform miracles. And they would then use that time of a detached God to be able to convert followers back to their own religion. That the seclusion room was actually this supernatural prison that he couldn't escape from, and that's what we were doing, and that's why he was refusing to cooperate with us, because he had to get back to answer prayers, or else we were going to steal all his followers. Which now,
That's better than Neil Gaiman. You should run with that.
man, I was listening to it. I was like, I kept asking people, is this a book he's read? Like, is there an actual story about this, or is this completely his own idea? And yeah, and I don't know if anyone's ever done it, but I have often thought I
You-
need to turn that into a novel series.
I think you do. I'd read it. I don't even
Yeah,
read fiction. I'd read that.
yeah. No, unfortunately, he passed away as well, so he can't even claim the copyright
Yeah.
now, unless he told other people. There's probably 50 other patients that are all writing the same book now.
That's a
Um,
sad one. You get the guys that died, and it's like,
hmm,
and you might be the only person that has a good memory of them.
yeah, yeah, potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
So changing gears again, one of the things that you mentioned when we're talking offline was that you've been doing a lot of work lately, or working on a book about training intuition, and this is a really big topic because I think every modern self-defense instructor, or anyone who says they operate in the reality-based self-defense community, which that term is I think it's sort of dying. But anyone who works in that reality self-defense world always encourages people to trust their intuition and what does your gut say and all that sort of thing. And I think ever since Gavin DeBecker's work came out, that's been a very popular teaching point. But
Yes.
not a lot of people talk about how do you actually train that intuition. It's sort of like you have this inbuilt super spidey sense and you have to listen to it, but there has to be things we can do to augment it. And that's why I'm fascinated to talk to you about what your thoughts are on that.
Um, this is a bang my head against the wall moment because it's, I woke up in the morning with the idea, has anyone written about that? And I thought maybe I'll do a magazine article on some stuff.
Sure.
And it's like 10 days later, it's like 40,000 words. And I wrote like half of those days. And it just came pouring out like nothing I've ever written. And then now I'm in the editing stage and I don't want to touch it because I'm afraid I'll fuck it up so bad. It's because it was completely intuitionally written. It's so within that, my definition is very slightly different. In that, when most people think of intuition, they think of it like a spidey sense, like you said, or like some little knowledge that bubbles up from your subconscious, and here's your little gift of stuff that you didn't notice before, and that works pretty well. But my take on the intuitive brain is less it's something that you have to develop or grow, rather than you have to take all the cognitive brain and all the talking to yourself and knock that shit out of your head so it can work.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Yeah. My gut feeling is that intuitive brain, those little things that pop up, that's you. The words you think in your head are just the words on the computer screen. It's not what the computer is doing. It's not even a shadow of what the computer is doing. But we focus on that. So there's a bunch of exercises in there and things to experience and stuff like that. It's sorry, and this is that we talked before we talked about the whole dead silence on the phone when you get people that think too much. And I sometimes think a lot, and I tend not to think in words, so it takes a while to get it through.
Yeah, that's fine.
But so there's this acknowledging that part of your brain is yours, or is you, not yours, is you. Getting comfortable with trusting, because we have this whole, if I just do what my instinct will say, then I might turn into a horrible beast, and that's pretty much bullshit. Almost everyone I know that talks about, I have this dark side, I need to get under control. Their dark side is a fucking chihuahua. I know if you've ever had that, something happens, I felt so much rage, and they're thinking, I felt so much rage, I have this horrible thing inside me, and I'm looking at them going, you felt that much rage and you didn't do anything. You're a pretty good person. And that's a chihuahua. The ones that get me are the ones that I felt slightly miffed, so I cut the guy's throat. That's someone with the dark side.
Yeah.
So getting into that trust, and a lot of this, because of the force issues and because I happened to write the reports, I realized that it wasn't conscious in the sense that made it to words in my head, but almost everything I did under pressure was a good decision. And it was never out of line with my own ethics. Those are just as internal as everything else. You don't have to remind yourself to be good if it's internalized. The only thing that's an issue is when what you think you believe and what you actually believe are not in alignment. So accessing this deep part of your brain, understanding why you should, getting it in alignment. And one of the things is a lot of people do have crappy intuition. If you were raised in a horrible, horrible, horrible family and you adapted to that, you expect that kind of horrible behavior. You think it's, your subconscious has learned that that's the way the world works.
And your baseline is all screwed up.
Right, exactly. So if your baseline is screwed up, and this is one of the, and there's some things in here about a little bit about, because I like to think that my baseline's not horribly screwed up, but some advice on how to filter that, how to get good new experiences, how to anchor into some of the most basic parts of life in your brain. I mean, something just as simple as being hungry. Um, Everyone gets hungry every so often, but instead of immediately, oh, I need to do something about this, sit in it for a while. This is where your brain develops. Stay hungry enough. If you stay hungry enough, it usually takes about a day. Your senses go through the roof. You start smelling, hearing, and seeing better when you're hungry, because your body wants you to find something and hunt it down and kill it and eat it. So anyway, a bunch of little exercises like that to try to clarify yourself. Get your own words in your head out of your way.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting approach. In that it's not so much about heightening those or heightening the intuition, but more killing the white noise that stops you from listening to it, or that makes you unaware of it. That's it makes a lot of sense. I think that's
well,
I look forward to reading it when that comes out, because I think that'll be excellent.
yeah. There's a saying for years that enlightenment is not the presence of wisdom; it's the absence of bullshit.
Very good, very good. You mentioned to me before to remind you to talk about bullshit morality. You want to expand upon that?
Yeah. The concept, and they of course are way too polite to call it bullshit morality. But have you read Freakonomics or Super Freakonomics?
I have, yeah.
Okay. One of the things that they talked about in a couple places are places where we put a moral tag on things that are purely, they're economist, so purely economical decisions. One example, and the only people that this will resonate with are writers, and the fiction writers will actually get upset about this. I know a lot of fiction writers. This is what my wife does. When I decided to write a first magazine article, I was published in 2 national magazines within 2 months. Just kind of like, nonfiction is very easy to get published in. If you go look at any magazine rack anywhere and look at all the nonfiction titles there, and how many fiction titles still exist.
Yeah, that's a good point.
If you want to write fiction, and I will tell this to any fiction writers who want to be published, write some nonfiction. You have the skills to string words together, you can research, and you can get published. What that does is then on your cover letter, you say, when you want to sell your fiction, I've been published in, and you name the national magazines you've been published in, or international magazines, and it immediately moves you to the top of the slush pile. You immediately get a better chance of getting your stuff published because they know or believe that you can work with a publisher. It is one of the smartest things you can do as a fiction writer to further your career. And nearly every single fiction writer I have ever said this to has had this immediately. No, that's not the right way to do it. Okay, that's what I'm talking about, a bullshit morality of there's a right and a wrong way. When something where there's no one getting hurt here, there's no no professional. I just did an article. You know how you do those quotes at the beginning articles?
Yeah.
The quote that I put down was, "No, stay here. I need to do this myself." Said no professional ever.
It's right up there with violence never solves anything. So,
Right.
well, actually, violence has solved heaps of things.
Heaps of things, like food. Show me a nonviolent way to get food. That's what I mean by the bullshit morality thing. That one of those, it's ineffective, it's stupid, it's dangerous. But we get this voice in our head saying, but it's the right thing to do. And a lot of times that voice has nothing to do with real life. One of the things I'm bouncing around right now is, have you ever been ashamed to call for backup?
No, I don't think so. I think it's I think there's probably been times where in hindsight I was like, maybe, but
Yeah.
In the moment, I don't think so.
But almost all amateurs think calling for backup is shameful.
True. True.
There's almost this, and that's what I'm talking about, that bullshit morality. They put a shame factor on something that's just common sense.
Mm, mm.
Um, the there are a whole bunch of problems we could solve, but the answers are icky.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, that's listen to some of the Freakonomics podcasts, and it'll come up every so often. But you start looking for that. We start adding an imaginary morality onto a practical question. If someone
Yeah.
is
So you
one
finish.
concrete example, I was doing a scenario training, and one of the people running through the scenario is basically you watch a traffic accident where one of the persons escalates, but you're a witness, and they escalate to the point that depending on how long you wait before you intervene or don't intervene, they're going to kick the and I almost always with a big guy and a small woman, but he's going to kick the woman to death.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there's a lot of this scenario is about your own morality. When can you step in? What can you live with? What you can't? But I found consistently with martial artists, instead of just the guys attacking women, instead of just coming up behind and taking shh and getting control, they tap him on the shoulder to turn around so they can have a fist fight with him.
Yeah, yeah, they're after a fair fight, which is that's one thing I used to tell
Fucking
people all the time is
stupid.
that fair fights are for amateurs. Fair fights are for
Mm-hmm.
people that don't mind losing. You can't afford to
Right.
lose when it's real.
Right. That's that moral dimension that they put on it.
Mm,
That whole fair in the concept of saving a life, because that's what you're
mm,
doing. It's not about the fight. It's about saving the life.
yeah.
That's the bullshit moral dimension I was talking about.
I think for me actually, because similar to you, I came from a judo background before I
Mm-hmm.
really dived into exposure to real violence, and
Mm-hmm.
I uh, I sort of conditioned myself with this combat sport mentality of
Mm-hmm.
there's rules and it's a contest and you kind of want to prove yourself and there's it's a game of wits and so on, and I quickly learned, thankfully very quickly, that you know what there's a place for fair sport and testing yourself, and
Mm-hmm.
that's in a controlled environment where you'll get to go home safely anyway, and
Mm-hmm.
but when I'm getting paid and and I need to be able to work the next day and the next year and the next month, and then there's no place whatsoever for fair fights because
Yeah.
yeah, I've found the odds stacked against me a few too many times, and I'd rather have all the resources on my side to start with. Thank you very much.
And that's just intelligent. And to quote Clint, it's I'm not paid to fight, I'm paid to win.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. All right, man. One last thing. I wasn't actually going to talk about this, but you touched on it very briefly early on when you're talking about managing the aftermath of the quote unquote shooting incident. And for anyone who wants to know
Mm-hmm.
more about that, you go into it quite in depth in facing violence, and
Yeah.
I highly recommend people read that. But
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned you'd previously thrown yourself into training to deal with the aftermath of the stress and the conflict
Mm-hmm.
situations that you're in, and because of that, you'd never really lost sleep over it. Now, a large percentage of our listenership are first responders
Mm-hmm.
that are dealing with violence on a regular basis, and obviously, you and I know people that can walk through hell every night of the week and show no ill effects, and there are those that will stumble on the curb on the entrance to hell and will be done for the
Mm-hmm.
rest of their life.
Yeah.
So, if you had to give advice to people, if you just a 2 minute piece of advice to people that are dealing with violence and aggression as to how they can manage that stress when they know it's going to be an ongoing part of their life, an ongoing part of their occupation, what control measures would you suggest they put in place to manage that?
Okay. 2 minutes, huh?
Well,
First,
you can have five.
no, I'll run.
Okay.
First, there is an edge out there. There's something that will fuck you up. Don't pretend there isn't.
Hmm.
When you hit it, if you manage it right, you'll come out stronger, not weaker. So don't think you're supposed to be messed up. Um, Always keep friends that have nothing to do with this job. It's one of those, they live in the real world, not us. So listen to them. Don't create a little echo chamber of people that only deal with horrible shit.
Hmm.
Um, Spend time doing normal things with normal people. Um, sleep when you can. Aerobic exercise is really important. Drink lots of water. Um, Those are probably the three best things for long-term adrenaline management. And the one thing that I used to tell every rookie is, you can take yourself seriously or you can take the job seriously, but never both at the same time. Be laughing at something. If you cannot find something to laugh about with whatever horrible shit you're dealing with, then laugh at yourself, because you can't find anything that's funny. So don't. If you get a choice between laughing and crying, always laugh, because if you start crying, you might never stop.
It's an excellent thought to take us home. And I just want to thank you very much for your time, Rory. It's been incredibly fulfilling for me to finally talk to you after years of being a fan of your work, and I hope that we get to do this again in the future, and we can really unpack some specific subjects. But I think our listeners will take a lot out of that. So, is there anywhere that you'd like to plug? Any products, any websites, anything that you'd like me to throw in the show notes that you can quickly talk about?
Not really. It'll be on my website soon, but I'll probably be in Brisbane in March, maybe in Perth. Okay. And Sydney. So hopefully I'll get to actually meet you in person.
Absolutely. If you're in the country, I'll get to you.
Cool. I realize it's about half a continent away, but yeah.
Yeah, it's all right. We're used to it. One thing about living in Australia is you get used to nothing being close to you.
Nice.
All right, Rory, I'll let you go. But thank you very much for your time, my friend, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, Joe. Thanks. It was fun.
All right, perfect. Thanks, mate. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you once again to Rory Miller. Man, what a wealth of information and wisdom and insight that guy is. As I said, Rory's been a massive influence for me, and I highly, highly recommend his material. Check it out. It's all brilliant. Meditations on Violence and Facing Violence are required reading for my students after a certain level, and I especially like his training for sudden violence as well as an instructor development tool. If you want more information on Rory, check out Chiron Training, CHIRON training.com. Has all his information. As he said, he has got some seminars coming up in Australia next year. Brisbane, Sydney, possibly Perth. I would love to get him into Melbourne as well. If anyone out there is listening and would like to host Rory, please reach out to me or to him directly, and we'll try and make that happen. All right, until next time, this has been the Managing Violence podcast. Stay safe, own your safety, and we'll see you soon.